is tonight. Okay, so can you see me and can you hear me good?
I can. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
I can see and I can hear you.
Okay.
I think I put, let's see, I did do something different. It gave me the option to reduce sound and enhance voice, but I'm not sure
About
if
to test that out. Let's see.
if that is, and of course I don't see that option anymore. As long as you can see me and hear me good, that's good. Because I
I
can
can.
see you and hear you good.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yep, yep. How you doing?
I'm amazing. How are you, beautiful?
Oh,
I
great.
love,
I'm great.
always love
I'm
your
loving this
smile.
green. I was like, hold on,
I
this
love
green.
your
I like this
smile,
green.
girl.
I get more of this green. I was kind of like feeling myself a little bit. I was like, I want more of this green. There's something popping a little bit.
Oh
And so,
God.
yeah. We're gonna start on time.
Absolutely.
Yes,
So
we
I
are.
wrote
Oh,
down some things.
mhm,
So I know we probably touched on this before, but some of the reasons why people don't get
mhm.
life insurance, so they shy away from it. And a personal story. So this morning when I was on a train, I ran into the daughter of a good girlfriend of mine that passed away a couple years ago from COVID. She was one of those prime examples of me starting insurance. I wanted to cover her with the company that I was with, but I couldn't because she was diabetic and she was on insulin. So
Oh,
with that company, I couldn't cover her. I was restricted,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
I always knew she had a problem taking her medicine on time and all that and all that. Then COVID hits and she passes away super
mm.
quickly, right? The company that I'm with now, and I'm not, going to be company centric at all about this conversation, but I say that to say the company I'm with now is the reason why I moved to this company because
Because
I
of
can
that.
cover an array of people who are sick, who have heart issues, who've had transplants, who've had criminal background issues and things like that. So life insurance is not a one size fits all, but that's like kind of like
Right.
we can segue into something like that. But she didn't have enough. She had the life insurance that was through the job, which covered enough for the funeral expenses,
Mm.
but didn't leave anybody enough money to help take care of her daughter. So the
Oh,
daughter
wow.
ended up back with the dad. You know what I'm saying? Because a cousin and sister, people wanted to keep her, but
Hmm.
everybody
No
didn't
one
have enough
had the
money to
financial
raise her.
assistance to do that.
Right. Which is hence why we need life insurance, right?
Hmm.
Because when things happen prematurely, you're not expecting
Hmm.
that kind of stuff to be necessary. You know what I'm saying?
And
So,
more importantly, just like the very exact, because that was one of my primary personal questions,
mm-hmm,
was because I always known, unfortunately, due to my brother's situation, it's been difficult because it's almost like if you have a certain current condition, people won't touch you,
mm-hmm,
and so you kind of lose that benefit. And to your point, not only do we not know that there are other alternatives, a lot of us
mm-hmm.
won't even seek other alternatives because it sounds like we automatically
Got
think that that's a
discouraged and
no-go.
turned down.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, well, if he had this, no one's going to take him. Or she's
Mm-hmm.
suffering with that, then who is it to go to? Because it's not like it's
Exactly.
advertised on the bus. It doesn't matter if you've had a stroke. You know what I'm saying? So
Yep.
I think we don't even look
Yep.
because we automatically feel like no, because that's not what life insurance. Most life insurance don't cover those situations,
They
and
want
so
you to
won't
be
even
extra
seek it.
healthy and things like that. But,
Right.
that's not everybody, especially in our community. That's not what it is
Especially.
because we have the diabetes, we got the high blood pressure, we have other heart conditions and things like that. We have, conditions that were passed down from grandparents and
Right.
all that. So, even diseases and things like that and conditions I ain't never heard of. I had to Google. I was like, well, what's that? Where'd that come from? Is that
Mm.
neurological? Is it whatever? We suffer from a lot of stuff out here.
Yeah.
Cancer, people who have, been cancer free for 4 to 5 years. I believe everybody deserves to have enough life insurance the way their family don't
Absolutely.
have to worry.
Absolutely. And we don't, but we don't know. We
Mm-hmm.
literally don't know. And we're gonna jump right in.
Yep.
I know, a few more minutes, but because even you mentioned that just pricked something. It's like, dang, it's like and there's so many cases like that. And
Mm-hmm.
to find out after the fact that, oh, I actually could have been covered, they could have been
That
covered,
part.
I could have
That
covered
part.
them,
Yep.
as opposed to going through all of what I went through to this day, because some people still suffering behind that,
Mm-hmm.
being able to cover that loved one. Um,
Exactly.
let's jump in it because I'm excited. I think this
Me
is
too.
definitely I mean, as you know, I've been trying to get you on here since last year. No fault of yours. It was a year before
You
that. I
be
come back
busy.
like
You be
every year,
busy.
and that was definitely no fault of
You be
yours.
trying to cover
But it's just a
everything, and it's
topic.
just like, yeah, you be trying to get everything, and everything that you cover is necessary.
It's
So
so
it's like, how do I fit everybody
necessary,
in?
and when we scroll, we see so much relevant information.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? We see so much stuff that we can't necessarily apply to our life to enhance or improve. It's like,
Right.
no, we need to talk about some of these things that are sick because these are sensitive topics.
Mm-hmm.
Don't nobody want you to know they ain't got none. We rather
Exactly.
act like we
But
got
think about the other spectrum. I get clients who say, I don't want no, so this is the other spectrum. I don't want nobody to benefit off my death. My kids, I work for mine, they got to work for theirs. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hear a little bit of everything, and I just be like, are you serious? I'd be like, so, because you had to struggle, because your parents didn't prepare properly, you're going to have
it.
your
You're gonna
kids go through the same
pass that
struggle.
down.
Yeah, like, when do we do better? We know better. Now, when do we do better for the
Mhm.
generations that come after us? You
Because
know?
you're speaking
So,
of someone that has it, that's investing in it, that has invested in it. So these aren't people that don't know
is
better.
that these are people that don't want to get it because they
Mhm.
say, I don't want nobody to benefit. So then I said, so someone else is supposed to be responsible for laying you to rest because your
Wow.
kids don't have 10,000, 20,000 sitting in their back pocket.
Wow.
Oh, they could just let the morgue take care of me. No, boo boo. They don't do all that. Like,
So I'm hearing mindset.
that part.
And it's got to be a bit of self-hate for you to even want to pass down that type of dysfunction and
That
lack, because I'm
part.
sure they're aware of what that
Yep.
means, that they're gonna have to start over from scratch because you. Okay. All right, we got
So I just
Sabrina
give you
here. We're
some.
gonna yeah, we're gonna dive into it. She got her own private practice. As I mentioned, I've been trying to get on here for a while just to educate us on insurance, the importance of it, not just the importance of it, but also the different options that are just not readily available for us. It's almost like if you're not in that industry or tied to someone in that industry, we really just are uneducated,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so she's going to tell us a little bit about herself, and then she's going to tell us how she got into insurance, and we're going to let her educate us this evening. I'm not going to chime in too much and interrupt, and I don't have a host of questions because I'm here to get educated as well. Even knowing and even having it my own self, I still know there's more to be learned. So introduce yourself, tell us about maybe where you were born and raised and what got
Oh
you into
wow.
insurance.
Oh yeah. So my name is Sabrina Grimes. On Facebook it's Sabrina Powers, but Sabrina Grimes is my legal name, right? I go by Sabrina Grimes. But I actually have been a licensed life insurance agent since 2017.
Mm,
I was born in Barstow, California. My dad was a military father, moved us to
mm,
Virginia, lived in
mm,
Maryland from age 5 until now. I ain't never been nowhere else. Traveled, of
mm,
course, but Maryland has been my home forever and a day, right? And I've actually been a product of life insurance.
mm.
So, although I was a product of life insurance, right, from two parents passing, it still didn't give me the perspective that that was something that I needed to get privately,
Oh,
right? Even though I
wow.
benefited from it, it was my mindset still wasn't connected that I needed to get it until I actually got married.
Hmm. Wow.
When I realized, okay, I got kids, I got a husband, we got to start planning for the future and things like that. So in my 20s to 30s, I didn't have life insurance outside of work
Hmm.
because I didn't think it was important or it was necessary.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So those are some of the reasons, and I know we'll touch on many more, but mindset and not really
Mindset.
understanding the why, because at that age, I didn't really believe that I was going to pass away in my
Right.
20s.
You got plenty of time. At least got 45 more years in you.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah. I'm a be here. What I need to worry about that for? But not really knowing what God's plan, because I'm a believer, you know what I'm saying? Not knowing what God's plan for us is, not really understanding that we need to be protected all the way around. We got car insurance, we got insurance on our phones, we got all this kind of stuff to protect all these things. We got homeowners insurance and all that. But we jogging around here like everything is everything without life insurance. But why? Why are we
Ain't that
doing that?
something?
Why are we doing that?
Ain't that something though? So we're
It
not
is.
oblivious to the benefits of insurance. We're not completely ignorant to the
Mm-hmm.
importance of insurance. It's the type of insurance. It's what we're covering. is what we don't. Like you said, it's important to cover all. Even we got phone insurance. You lying to me? We got phone
Exactly.
break. I'm like,
I probably
they gonna
got
fix it.
girlfriends that got insurance on their purses, their high-end purses and stuff like that, so that, you know, in the event of fire or anything like that, their property is covered. But what about our bodily property? Why don't we care enough?
Mm-mm.
Because we're looking at what benefits us in the moment
Now,
and
now,
not what's supposed to be able to help to benefit our
yeah,
family in
yeah.
that time. That because everyone is going to pass away. It's just when. We just don't know when. And we don't understand that we have to protect those people who we leave behind, because at the end of the day, who actually, not a lot of us, can reach back and grab
Exactly.
$10,000 out, $20,000 to lay somebody to rest. I told my kids when I, you know, first got into the business, look, I go to work so I can provide for the quality of
Mm-hmm.
living and things like that right now. We need to get life insurance because I'm not working every day to pay for somebody's funeral. I'm not
Right,
working
right.
every day to contribute. I'm not working every day to donate. I'm just one of those people. I don't even donate to GoFundMe,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. And it's not because I'm not a giver and I don't have compassion. I just know that $30, $40 a month could have
Could have
made
prevented
the
that.
difference, right, between a family being able to have a cremation, a full funeral, anything that you want your family to be able to utilize to lay you to rest. It's affordable.
Mm.
But we think we're getting scammed. Our people
Right.
sometimes thinking it's a scam. Life insurance is a scam. They don't pay out. They don't do
Well,
this. They don't do out.
anything becomes taboo for us in the community. All it takes is one family member have a bad experience,
That
and
part.
that's it.
That
That's
part.
it. One person have a bad experience, and now we're done. We don't need insurance, and so
Exactly.
everything becomes like a taboo to us. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of crazy,
It's
right?
weird.
Like we're
It's
easily
weird.
turned off by one
But
experience
let
that we don't even know the
Ruth
full
Chris
story
mess up
behind.
my order. Let Ruth Chris mess up somebody's order. But at the end of the day, I'm still gonna go there
Oh, you
because,
going back
oh,
next
you just had a
birthday?
bad waitress. They was off their game or whatever. Don't even worry about it. I'm still going because I love their macaroni and cheese or something like that. I'm not gonna deter my visit because of your bad experience. But when we're buying something as intimate as life insurance, we make those quick and hasty decisions off
Hmm.
of a family member's experience, not knowing the details of it, because
Right,
there are details that kind of cloud or support the reason why somebody probably didn't
right,
get covered.
right.
They might have lied on an application. Their policy probably lapsed and they didn't tell their
Hmm.
family members, and people calling up talking about, yeah, my family member, my grandmother had this life insurance policy. That's what, when people say they have paid up life insurance
Hmm.
policies, I cringe because I'm like, oh, paid up? Okay. So eventually that payment is going to need to be received. So when you tell me you have a paid up policy, you've paid to a certain degree, you're not putting any more money into it. That money,
Oh,
the premiums are getting eaten up somewhere. That money that you put in, the
it's
premiums are getting paid. And when
eating it
that
up.
runs out, there's no more policy.
Hmm.
So your grandmother
Wow.
got that policy sitting in the drawer, right? That she said, I done paid that 20 years ago, my life insurance policy. I tell people all the time, get the policy out the drawer, call the company, and check to see if it's active.
And so the terminology is paid up,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the one that you recommend not us not
Yeah,
getting,
I shy away from that. I shy away from those at
even
all
if
because
it's
eventually the
on the
money's going
behalf
to
of
run out.
someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, premiums have to be paid somehow because this is a business. You
Right,
have to be paying, they have to be getting money. They're just not going to cash you out $50,000 and
right.
they're not getting regular payments. So when that period is gone and it's lapsed, then the policy has actually, in
So
essence,
explain
lapsed.
the period when you say that period. So give a more accurate example of
So a
that.
20-year period. So someone could have a paid up policy and it was paid up 20 years. Once that 20 years has expired, the payments have to be coming from somewhere.
And if they're not,
Then your policy is dead.
so is it dead or is it exhausted itself over time because it has not been any
It's the
premiums haven't
same
been made?
thing.
Mm,
Dead, is lapsed, is dead, is non existent, is not active. All
wow.
those words, terminology are
And
synonymous
someone
with
possibly paid it up 20 years ago and there's no benefit because there were no premiums paid.
mm-mm, no longer premiums paid. It
Wow.
ran out. Yep. And people don't realize they think paid up. And my thing is the life insurance agent that sold it to you were more concerned about the commission they were getting, because they're thinking, okay, my client got at least 20 years, and after 20 years, I don't have to worry about seeing them no more. Where is your
Right.
agent? Their agent
Mm.
gone, passed away, they doing some
Possibly.
other job. You know what I'm saying? So how likely is it that you've had that same agent for 15, 20 years?
Mm.
A lot of people have not.
Mm.
So then they call in the company mad because they're operating off of a policy that they thought was good when no one checked on it over the year, over the course of time, to see, okay, how much time do I really have left? Is there still money sitting in there? Do we still
Mm.
have the luxury of the benefit if something were to happen? And we check at the wrong time. We check when it's too late.
So let me ask you. So let's say someone is in that position and sees this, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the recommendation? What are you telling them to do right now?
Always call the company to check. My grandmother even had life insurance policies that she had in a folder and all that. We called one day. My grandmother's 92 years old. We called one day, and the policies, the actual company was out of business. The company didn't even exist anymore.
Wow.
So they transferred the life insurance policies that they had to another company, but those policies were no good because she
Right.
had policies that were paid up. And usually our grandparents, our great grandparents were living in that premise of paid up policies were the thing to
Right.
do, right? Because once I pay it up, all I got to do is stick it in a drawer. My family is good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always, I always say, the smaller the print, the trickier it gets,
Hmm.
because that fine print, because we don't read the fine print, we're only reading the large print.
Mm-hmm.
The fine print is really what's going to tell you how long your policy is going to be available, what the interest rate is, if you have to borrow money against it, and things like that, what interest rate your policy is growing at, all those little details. So when people have policies that are building cash value and they want to go borrow money and they realize they haven't put enough money into it,
To get
all you
out.
had to do was
Mm-hmm.
read that fine print, and because it's a contract.
Right.
Any contract, you have to make sure that you're reading the fine print, because that's going to be like the devil in the details situation. Those details they make very, very small because they don't want you to ask those
Right.
questions. They
At
want you to
all.
worry about the big print. Ask me good questions about the
Right.
big print, and we can have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation, because those are easier to answer. Now I got to skate around to figure out how to explain to you what the real is about your policy and the
So you
details in
mean
your
to tell me with the
contract.
paid up policy, there's no way of that being reopened for someone to go? Let's say it was a grandparent, and now the granddaughter wants to now, she realized that, okay, well, this has been paid up for X amount of years, it's expired or whatever. There's no way of reopening that. It's
Think
just
about
dead.
this. Think about this. Now we're 20 years older. We have all these extra health
Yeah.
conditions. So now that person, that grandparent, that parent, now you're going to have to requalify, because once a policy dies or lapses, now you're put into that awkward position of 20 years ago, I was healthy. I didn't have high blood pressure. I
Right.
didn't have diabetes. I
Right.
didn't have any of these health conditions, right?
So you basically got to do a whole nother physical. You get your, yeah.
Some will require a physical. Some will just take the information that they receive from the MIB, which is the Medical Information Bureau, that has all of your doctor's appointments, every medication you've ever taken. We got background checks and things like that. Somebody could have had a felony that they still dealing with. Somebody could have had a medical condition. There's so many things that can disqualify you from certain types of policies, that you put yourself in an awkward position when you let policies lapse. That's why I tell people, when you get the policy, make sure that it's a policy that you can afford without blinking, without thinking
Mm-hmm.
about it. You can always increase later. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
can only afford a $30 or $40 policy right now for that, just in case. But now, when it's now, I have a house, I got a family,
Right.
I got a new job. Now it's all right, let's increase the life insurance according to my standard of living, because now I have assets to protect. I have a
Right.
family to think about. As you increase, then increase your life insurance. Everybody doesn't need to be walking around here with $1 million life insurance policy, right?
Mm.
Some people, I won't put that much on 20-year-olds that have no children, because all your parents really need is enough to lay you to rest, right? Respectfully, because you don't have children, you don't have any assets, you don't have a home. So 50,000 baseline, 50 to 75, is really all you
For
need, because you don't really have
temporary,
much
for the
going
most
on.
part.
Exactly. I don't need nobody to get rich. We just need to make sure that you have a decent burial. And then you get married or you have a child and things like that. Now I might be putting 150,000 on you. Now you got a husband, 3 kids, a home that's 500. Now we living in $500,000 houses now, right? So now you might need $1 million policy because you want to make sure that the children are well taken care of. You want to make sure that the spouse is taken care of. You want to make sure that if you need to pay a house off, because now you're less an income.
Right.
So before we had 2 incomes operating in a household and maybe even one. Now you pass away. Now you're minus $100,000, $150,000. So where does that additional income come from? It's supposed to come from the life insurance that you left behind, because it's called income replacement. Life insurance is just not burial. Life insurance, when you're growing family and you're living your life, it's to replace an income that's coming in to take care of all the basic necessities. And I think people miss that, and that's why a lot of times people are getting life insurance late in life. They coming to me and they like 70 years old, 80 years old, and they're mad because now they're paying $200 a month, $150 a month. Well, you could have been paying $60 if you, you could have been paying $30, $40, $60 a month or something like that if we had had this conversation 20 years ago. But now you have to pay more because now your life expectancy is shorter. Now you have health conditions. Exactly. Illnesses and things like that. Like I've run into, older people who only have high blood pressure and not anything else, but it's a small few, very small amount that are out here not living with any health conditions. A lot of people that had toes amputated, legs amputated because of diabetes and things like that. A lot of different things. COVID has taken a lot of people away. You know what I mean? So there are so many different things that we're living with today that we didn't experience before.
And so COVID should have been a prime example, right, of how unexpected something can happen beyond your control that has nothing to do with your current health condition, nothing that you could have actually possibly even avoided, right? And so summarize, people just join us. No paid up. No paid up policies.
No paid up. And if you do have a paid up policy for your grandmother, your parent, or whoever, pull it out of the drawer, call the company, see how much time is left, see how much money in premiums that you have paid on that and have left, to see if you need to make adjustments. Any contract that you ever have, whether it's a car, whether it's a house, whatever you have, you should always double check the terms and conditions of the contract, right? Because that's where we always fall short. We think we're good. Always check the terms and conditions. It's okay to call a company and say, hey, I just want to double check the status of my policy or double check the status of my parents' policy. If you're not the beneficiary, of course, they're going to be limited in the information they're going to provide to you, but get your parents on the phone. This is important. And that's the thing. These are conversations that we shy away from having. And sometimes your parents, your uncles, your aunts don't want to have these conversations with you in our community because what do they say? I don't want nobody trying to bury me. I don't want nobody trying to knock me off because I got life insurance. I don't know. It's always that we shy away because we think somebody want to do something to us. But these are the conversations you need to gather your family together to have, because you need to know what's going on with your business. This is family business, because if they expire, who is going to be the responsible party that people are going to be looking at to take care of a funeral? Your brother, your cousin. You can have a favorite cousin and no other siblings is around, and you're the only family member, and people looking at you because they remember y'all related. So you the one that's going to be responsible. The girlfriend's going to be gone. Whatever was left in the house that they can't pick up and put on their back, they're going to be gone. So they're going to be looking at family members to be the responsible party for burying somebody who's passed away untimely, and that's just the era that we live in.
And so the other thing that you cover for those that just joined is to adjust your policy as your life adjusts.
Absolutely.
If you're single and you get married, adjust it.
Absolutely.
You don't have children, you have children now, adjust it. You're renting, now you're owning, adjust it. Right?
Absolutely.
250 house, now it's 500,000, adjust it. That's what you're saying, right? Okay.
Exactly. And even beneficiaries. Some people think that once you list the beneficiary, that's the beneficiary for life. No, you have the ability to modify your beneficiaries as you see fit. Your
Mm.
child that you thought was going to be the responsible one may turn out to be the black sheep, and you don't want them in control of anything. So
Mm.
now you have to make adjustments. Maybe you make a parent, maybe you make an ex or something like that, a child's father, and then we get into who can we have life insurance on, right? But back to the beneficiaries, you want to make sure that a lot of people be like, oh, put my kids down. Well, you don't want to put your children down if they're under the age of 18, because then the money is going to transfer into a trust. Then no one's going to be able to touch
Mm.
it until that child is
Is
18.
right.
So you thinking that money is going to take care of all the funeral
At a
arrangements and
funeral, and
things
it's
like
not.
that. Well, they only 18 and they cutting a check to the name that
Of the
is on the beneficiary
beneficiary.
list, right?
Mhm.
And they're not going to cut that check to that child until they're of legal age. And then you have to
Mm.
think, if you got $100,000, $200,000 policy, is that child responsible enough
Right.
to handle that kind of money when they never handled that kind of money before? So I always recommend to my clients, hey, I know you want to leave X amount to your children because you don't trust in it, because a lot of it is trust. I don't trust nobody. Me and my siblings ain't getting along, all these other kind of things, right? So I say, okay, leave a portion to that responsible person, even if it's 10% of the total
Mm.
amount, 20% of the total amount, and then leave the rest to your child, or leave 50% to the person who's going to be taking care of your child in the event that you pass before your child is of an age where they can take care of themselves.
Mhm.
Because someone has to have enough money to raise a child.
Right.
Someone has to have enough money to take care of the expenses of your funeral and things like that. These things cost. They nickel and dime you for every single thing. So you have to make sure that you have a clear thought process as to who your beneficiaries are going to be, because that's going to be important, because a life insurance company ain't going to say, well, we thought you wanted, or because
Right.
you have a child. Like, it's not our job to think about that. We're going to go with your contract, with what's in black and white, and those are only people we talking to. Those are only people
Mhm.
we talking to legally. That's all we can do, right? So the onus has to be on you to have those conversations, draw out a will,
I was
make sure you
going to
have your.
ask that too when you were talking about the leave it to the beneficiary and the children. Hmm.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
but when you think about the will has no bearing. Once you identify beneficiaries, whatever you got going on in the will, that does not supersede the
Right.
benefit. So the life
Mm.
insurance company is not saying, can we get a copy of the will? They don't care, right? It's who's listed as a beneficiary. That's going to be who we cut the check to. And that's just it. That's all. That's why you have to make sure. And when I did mine, I was like, all right, I had somebody overseeing money, right? So you put together a trust, and you have, if your children are under the age, before my children got grown, it was all right. I had my one of my good girlfriends. You're going to be in charge of the trust, as this money is distributed. When my children get to a certain age, because I don't want my children on Instagram popping bottles with
Right.
$100,000 because they ain't, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, no, I don't want my children to run through the money quicker than they got it, right? So I want to make sure that there's someone there to oversee the transition of the money, the spending of the money, making sure my kids have a home, a
And your
roof over their
will
head,
is what you wrote out to
the
do that, to
the
cover
will and
that,
the trust,
to keep them
exactly. So
responsible. Okay.
exactly, and have someone oversee that until they get to a certain age. And even that went into their 20s to say, all right, at this age, you're going to allocate this amount of money. They're going to get an allowance, every
Mm.
6 months or
Mm.
every year. They're going to be distributed this amount of money to be able to control it. And then once they reach like 30, it's like, all right, then they're on their own. They should, have a viable job. They should be responsible. Then you can go ahead and release the rest of the money. Those are some things that I did personally, just in knowing how irresponsible our
Right.
children can be when they get a little bit of money in their hand, because there are so many things, and the internet has just changed the dynamic of our thought process and how we handle money, that I just put those extra stipulations on personally, because I know
Hmm.
my kids. So I'm just like, I
Because I
know who's
remember
responsible.
when I was young single parent, and I can only imagine that others do it as well. You get in. Daughter was a beneficiary. Like I wasn't. It didn't. I mean, she was probably 4 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so,
Exactly.
there was no real thought process. First of all, there was no belief that I would be going anywhere. Number one,
Exactly.
right? So we figured, okay, well, by the time it's coming to effect, she'll possibly be older. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but I think we do that, especially if we're single. single parent, single woman, we just figure, okay, well, especially if there's an
Mm-hmm.
issue in the family, okay, nah, I'm leaving this to my daughter. And what you're saying is you got to be mindful of that, especially depending on if they're a child. Because if you
Exactly.
leaving that financial responsibility or obligation with them, insurance isn't going to honor them if they're not of a certain age when death comes.
Mm-hmm.
And so now
Yeah.
somebody got to come out of pocket and you blame the
Still.
insurance company when no, that's what he or she did,
Exactly.
not realizing that this child will not be of age when this happens. Okay.
Exactly.
You
Yep.
said
And
something I
mm-hmm.
want you to go back to.
Okay.
You mentioned felons.
Mm-hmm.
So cover that.
So some life insurance. So let's just talk about the differences between life insurance types, right? So you have the term insurance, which is for a period of time. So I get a policy. It might be in effect for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever that time period is. That's what you're paying for, just the insurance, pretty much just like your car insurance, right? I'm just paying for that amount of coverage for that amount of time. But with term insurance, you have to qualify because it's the more less expensive policy. You
Um,
have to, they're looking to cover people. So like we said before, life insurance is a business at the end of the day. They're not just looking to distribute
right. They
$500,000,
ain't
a
looking to
million
just cover
dollars
expenses.
for everybody and everything, right? So you have to qualify, and they're looking for the more healthier client. They're looking for people who don't pose a risk. So they look at felons sometimes, most times, as a risk. Because if I
Mm,
did something that put me into the position to be incarcerated, well, what did I do to get incarcerated? They're not looking at the level of crime. You've just been incarcerated, right? What
mm,
happened in jail? While you were in jail, right? Did you have beef with somebody? Somebody got a hit on you. Because then when you come out, now you want a $500,000 policy. Well, maybe you made somebody mad in a joint. Maybe somebody was mad that you were able to come out and they put a hit on you. So there's a level of risk that comes with people who've had convictions, you know what I'm saying? And they're not looking at the type of conviction. If you had a conviction, if you on probation, anything like that, that could disqualify you from certain types of insurance,
certain types of
certain types of
insurance.
life insurance. Yeah, some that you have to qualify and you have to be in really good standing. Some of them look at your credit. Some of them look at your background. They look at your health. And it's crazy when people talk about these commercials and say, "Oh, you don't got to do a health this, you don't got to do a health that." And I'd be like, "Look, even though you might not need to do a full physical where you're going in and giving blood, we have access to
Medical
your medical history.
records.
We have access to your hospitalizations. We have access to your prescription history. I've
Mm.
had people get disqualified for pain medicine that a doctor prescribed that they never took
Oh wow, but it's on their record.
as an
It's on their medical
opioid. So
record.
you have to be cautious of your medical records and go back to your medical record to say, okay, if you suffer from any kind of pain or any discomfort, always take a look at what they're, just like your credit report. Check your medical history, because if there's something that the doctor prescribed or listed in your medical history and it's not applicable, you need to get it removed, because that
Mm,
could disqualify you from different types of life insurance. Life insurance is not a one size fits
right,
all either. So don't
right.
think that just because you were denied for a term policy that there's no life insurance company out there. You and I talked about that in the beginning, that there's no life insurance company out there that's going to cover you ever. There's always going to be somebody. It might be a
That's
little bit
willing to
more
take that risk.
pricey, right? A
Mm,
little bit more pricey, but you spoke to risk. Because you're a higher risk, you may have to pay a higher dollar amount than some. And don't compare yourself to anybody. Just because your cousin is paying $30 a month,
Cause you know we doing that.
is that, well, why your policy 30? Don't
Exactly. Why
don't
they
talk about
trying to
it.
be
Just
75 and yours 1999?
exactly that part. You know what I'm saying? And then the other thing that get me is when they do the commercials, where it's like, oh, I seen something on TV that's 9.99 or whatever. I said, did you see an asterisk on top of that 9.99?
Right.
You're never gonna find anything that's 9.99. It's gonna be 9.99 per hundred, like per unit. That nine.
Mm-hmm. You're on mute. You froze. I think you froze up. Can you still hear and see me? Uh-oh. Let's see. Hold on. No worries, no worries, no worries. There's some good information. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry
It
about
kind of
that.
froze and then it showed the microphone. And I was like, okay, something happened.
Somebody tried to
Okay.
call. But yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you understand the terms and conditions and not just go to a company because you think they're the cheapest. It's not necessarily going to be the
Mm-hmm.
cheapest. They have to now understand your personal health conditions and things like that. And that's going to determine what your price point is going to look like. So it's never
Mm-hmm.
going to be a one size fits all situation.
And, and don't give up just because you were not approved for one. You got to find one that will, because there's always someone willing to take a risk, but it's
Hmm.
gonna cost you.
Look, I
Is what you're
got life
saying.
insurance companies in my back pocket. I'll try a whole bunch of them, but I got one or two that I know will just about take anybody. But I
Mm,
tried it, but they're more expensive. So that's
right.
why I try to err on the side of let me try some of the major ones that I know, will cover special situations. But some people's situations are just so extreme, or maybe because they've, had a combination of a lot of issues that I just have to go with that last effort. And some people, I'll ask them to get a copy of their medical record or their MIB record so I can
Mm-hmm.
actually see what the underwriters are looking at to make the decision. And then that'll allow me to go to a company that I know will cover them, even, despite the situations that they have in their medical record or in their medical history. And then some stuff I'll ask them, do you still do this? Do you still take this? Do you remember
Mm-hmm.
the doctor prescribed this? No, I ain't never need that. What they put that in there for? Or they've not been a smoker for 5 years and they're trying to give them a smoker's rate, but they haven't smoked for 5 years. Well, now we want to get that modified so we can get them
Mm-hmm.
retested, so we can get them the non-smokers rate versus the smokers
So
rate.
how do they get things like that modified?
They just write into MIB, or they have their doctor modify the
Okay.
medical record or take it off, and then it'll update the record, and then we can just re-pull the information.
Is that something that can happen like relatively quick, or is that something that can take weeks?
Probably a
Or
couple weeks,
okay.
probably a couple of weeks to get it done, because it takes probably 5 to 7 days for you to get the record. Then you have to make
Mm-hmm.
the appointment for the doctor to do what they need to do, and then they have to update the record. So it could be about 3 weeks to 4 weeks for the process to actually finish itself out.
Okay. Okay. So high risk, high
Mhm.
risk felons, health issues, um, smokers, drinkers, like all of that immediately push you
Oh,
as
let's go
high
back to the
risk.
smoker. Let's go
Okay.
back to the smoker though. So this is what I found with some companies. Marijuana is more favorable than nicotine.
Mm,
So we're looking at smokers, some companies will differentiate marijuana versus nicotine, and you won't get a smoker's rate with some companies if you're smoking marijuana, but you will get a smoker's rate if it's cigars and cigarettes,
hmm,
because marijuana is supposed to be natural. People take it for health reasons and things like that. Nicotine causes cancer,
hmm.
right? It's said to cause cancer. So that puts you in that high risk bracket. But some companies won't give you a smoker's rate because you smoke marijuana. So when I ask my people, like, did you smoke? Please tell me you smoke weed. Don't tell me you smoke.
Those are
Sometimes I just be like that. Please tell me it's weed and not cigarettes. Please, or for this, please tell me it's
wow.
weed and not cigarettes.
So, but is it ever? Does it ever have to be verified? Like, are you? Because I don't know. I'm sorry. They're gonna probably get upset with me, but I feel like nowadays it's almost like animals. Like, right? Everybody has a service dog now, not a pet, to
Mm-hmm.
kind of, try to bypass some rules.
Right.
And so I feel like the same thing kind of happens with marijuana. Like, everybody want to make it seem as if it's because of some medical reason. Do
Mm-hmm.
they? I'm sure they verify that, right? Like if
Mm-mm.
someone said they won't
For
verify.
marijuana,
Hmm.
they could care less. They could care
Oh.
less because it's so legalized. It's legalized in a lot of states. So I'm doing applications in Maryland and DC, I don't, there's not an issue because it's legal. You can smoke it. Might
I hear that.
shouldn't be
Okay,
selling it, but you could smoke it. You know what I'm
right,
saying?
right.
So that's not an issue. So it's gonna be dependent on the state, depending on the questions that we get and things like that.
Okay,
So it is state. You know, different states have different laws
right.
to support insurances. Again, it's a contract. So whatever the state laws or requirements are, that's what the contract for that state
Okay,
follows. So life insurance applications are state specific.
right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, are there some health conditions that you find are impossible to get people coverage?
I haven't lately. I haven't run into anything where I just couldn't get anyone covered,
Okay,
thankfully. So knock on wood.
okay,
Definitely. Yeah. So when I was dealing with more term specific, you had to be kind of close to almost healthy, then I was having to deny a lot of people. But now I have access to a lot more companies who have more leniency when it comes to those issues. So I've been able to cover a lot of people who I wasn't able to cover when I was dealing with strictly term insurance. So it definitely is a benefit to be able to connect with an agent who has a wide range, because you're not just dealing with yourself, right? Now you might be dealing with you, and then I got a client that says, hey, my mother's 80, can you help her? Hey,
mm-hmm,
I got a brother who
mm-hmm,
just,
mm-hmm,
got out of jail, can you help him? So that opens up my client portal, right, to be able to
right,
help everybody in that family, and not just limited to the healthy non-smokers,
right,
right? I can now help more people get covered, because a lot of times they are having family meetings and say, all right, do you got life insurance? Do you got life? It's like, that's the question. You got life insurance because we just lost Uncle Ray Ray.
right.
Now, do you have it? Do you have it? Do you have it? That's unfortunately, that's when the conversations with the family start opening up, because now they see how much it costs to lay Uncle Ray Ray to
Right.
rest. And everybody had to come out of pocket because they didn't have the proper coverage. So they say, we don't want to go through this again, right? We want to make sure that everybody has at least a $20,000 policy. We
Mm-hmm.
don't want to get rich. We just want to make sure that we don't have to come out of pocket with anything, and leave it at that. And
Right.
those are the conversations that a lot of my, friends and close family and people like that are having at these family meetings. We having a family reunion. Sabrina, can you come out? Because my mother want to talk to you, and her sisters, we got to get coverage on all them. But think about this. Now we're thinking about it when they're older. We're thinking
Right.
about it when they now have all these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Now the children want to split the expenses,
Mm-hmm.
right? That says, all right, mom life insurance gonna cost $150 a month. How much you got on that? We
Mm-hmm.
got to split this because I can't foot that bill for $150
Mm-hmm.
on my own. Now you got to think.
So
Now we got to
so we
split
need to
the
be asking your
beneficiaries.
nephews, nieces, and cousins that are 22 and 25, saying, "Hey, do you have life insurance? You want to get it now?"
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. The
Mm-hmm.
cheaper, the earlier, the better. The earlier, the better, because then you can get that rate locked in for the duration of your policy, and you don't have to worry about the rate changing or fluctuating, right? And then I tell them, don't let it lapse, because if you let it lapse, now you put yourself in position to have to requalify. Now
Requalify.
you might have another condition, and you never want to put yourself in that kind of position. So we just want to make sure that you're always, I say, make sure it's affordable. If it's $60, it's $60, and no matter what happens, hell or high water, you're gonna make sure that $60 is paid no matter what. The cell phone bill, you can ask them to give you an extra month. The car note, you can ask them to give you an extra month. You never want your life insurance policy to lapse, because now they have something that they can hold over your head
Mm,
that says now
exactly.
you got to requalify. And if you don't
Mm-hmm.
requalify for the same rate, now you got to worry about, now I got to pay an extra $100 because now I have these other conditions. Now the situation has changed price
Mm.
wise. So we just want to make sure that you stay on top of that at all times.
So I want you to continue with the different types, but let me ask
Mhm.
you, what's too young to get a
There's
policy? What,
no
okay.
age is too young. I tell them as soon as they come out the womb, they 7 days old, put life insurance on your
Mm-hmm.
kid, because I've seen a lot of situations where people have lost nephews, 14 years old, pass away in his sleep. Child wasn't sick at all a day in his life, no allergies, no nothing, passed away in his sleep. People have lost children at 6 months old, three
Mm-hmm.
months old, 3 days old. You know what I'm saying? So it's never too early to make sure that you have life insurance on your children. I say get it on them as soon as you have them, and you don't have to worry about it. You may have to adjust it, as they get older, when they begin to mature, off of the children's policy, because you're probably going to get them a more junior level or a juvenile policy in the beginning, and then you just transition them over to an adult level policy, right, when they get older. So just always making sure that that's something super important that you're always having a conversation about, married or not. And think about this: we think about who you can cover as well, right?
That
So
was on the tip of my tongue.
right? So people that you have a fiduciary responsibility to, people that you are financially or would be financially responsible for, are people who you can legally, right, get life insurance on. So if me and you are cousins, I'm not supposed to be getting life insurance on you because you're just my cousin. You got your own family. We just cousin. We ain't brothers and sisters or anything like that. So legally, you really shouldn't be getting life insurance on me because we don't have a fiduciary responsibility for one another, right?
But
But
if you're the
I
cousin that's
can,
been sleeping in my basement,
because you
then
ain't got no
because
job,
you
right? That might be a
okay,
whole
I'm
nother
making sure.
situation. That might be a whole nother situation. So we want to figure out how to, maneuver around that. But again, it depends on the company, because some companies are very strict about that fiduciary responsibility. So they won't allow you to be the owner of you can be the beneficiary all day long, but some of them won't allow you to be the owner of the policy and make the payments from your bank account. So there are some backdoor restrictions depending on the company. So you have to disclose your specific situation to whatever agent you're dealing with so they can make sure that they pair you up with the right company that's going to be specific to your situation.
Okay.
Right? But back to the person. So I can get life insurance on my brother. I can get life insurance on my mother, my grandmother, my father. I have life insurance on my ex-husband. You get it on your baby father, because you all have that fiduciary or financial connection. If something were to happen to that person, right? How does that impact your quality of life, or the quality of life that you have a shared invested interest in, which could be a child? If my grandmother were to pass away, right? I have a fiduciary responsibility, because usually, right, we the ones taking care of the
Right.
grandparents and the parents. So we can get life insurance on grandparents. Grandparents can get life insurance on their grandchildren. Because if you got a child out here that's living reckless and irresponsible, who the kids go to? Granny,
Right.
right? Grandmother taking care of the kids, right? So those are some things I tell young mothers out here all the time, young single mothers: get life insurance on these baby fathers out here, baby fathers, life insurance on the baby mothers, because there's no guarantee. We done seen mothers of children young get killed out here in the streets. And then who's going to take care and raise that child? And where does the money come from now that you have someone else that was financially responsible with you to take care of this child? They're no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got a baby
So is
mother,
that
baby
so is that
father,
easy? You think
it
it's
is.
not a difficult thing? Do they have to like full
So
cooperate and
mindset, it goes to mindset. Being able to talk to somebody who's mature, who understands, hey, we're raising this child together, right? You're paying for school clothes this year. I'm paying for school clothes next year. We, paying for the roof over the head. This guy may be giving you child support money. Whatever the financial connection is, you have to. That's all they say. Be careful who you sleep with, right? Don't sleep with nobody with this immature mindset out here. You know, but if you got even your boyfriend in the streets, you got a child together, he in the streets, get life insurance on him. He out here living reckless. He out here in the streets doing whatever. You need life insurance on that brother. Because at the end of the day, who's going to the streets ain't going to help you raise your child, right? Who's
not at all?
going to help you financially take care of your child, right? If something happens to their parent, male or female, whoever, it could be a baby
Right.
mother out here living reckless,
Mm-hmm.
right? But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're having that conversation. It's not to make me rich, right? It's to make sure that I'm able to take care of the child that we're raising together in a way that you would have wanted that child to be raised, right? How would you want your child to be raised? I hear a lot of people, when someone says, talk to my uncle or talk to my aunt about getting life insurance, and I call them up, I say, hey, your so and so wanted me to have a conversation with you. They wanted to get life insurance. For what? I don't want to leave no money to nobody. I had to work for mine. I ain't gonna leave nobody no money and all. And I just be like, what? When are we going to want better for the generations that are coming after us? Just because your parents may not have set aside money or a
Right.
fund or had, people have, what do they call them? What the rich people leave their children,
Inheritance, the trust
inheritance. Yeah,
funds, and all
they
that.
didn't, you didn't have $1 million inheritance and things like that. With the inheritance and a lot of your videos that you shared, this week, that inheritance a lot of times is created through life insurance. When we're looking at other cultures outside of us, sometimes I hear the Asian culture, they'll put $1 million life insurance policy on the oldest couple relatives, because that's how they create businesses. When that oldest relative, they know they're going to pass
They
away,
know.
so they got that life insurance on that relative. So when that relative passes away, they lay him to rest, and then they spread out that life insurance money to the adjoining family so they can start businesses.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. How else are we going to create wealth if we're not doing it through entrepreneurship, or we're very frugal with our money and we're saving and we're investing and things like, where's it going to come from?
Right.
That's just another avenue for us to secure wealth for our generations, is through life insurance, generational
So
wealth. That's how you
some of
create
those
that.
types of insurance, because there's certain types of policy that you can kind of get, you can pull money out
Hmm.
of, right? Presently, it doesn't have to be any death involved at all. And there's
Hmm.
also some, right? And I'm just throwing questions out here. There's also some where you can just kind of leave it and let it sit. So
Hmm.
then when someone does transition, it's not just covering expenses for the burial, like, but you're kind of really, you got something like you said, you could probably start a business with,
Absolutely.
what's left in that policy.
Absolutely.
So break down those other terms, those different, not terms, but other types of
So
policies.
you have whole life policies, which people, old school people, refer to it as permanent insurance,
So
right?
it's the
But
same thing, just said two different ways.
exactly. That's how they used to talking about it as permanent insurance. Can I get some permanent insurance? Think about this. No insurance is ever permanent. It's all contract based. Everything has a contract. Everything has a term where at the end of a period of time, things will shift. You just have to make sure you understand what the parameters of your contract are. But whole life is what they usually consider that permanent insurance. Whole
Okay.
life insurance, right? Whole life insurance is more so, I look at the whole life insurance for people who have more health conditions, because you are paying a little bit more money, right? You are putting money is going in to cover the insurance, and it's going in a pot that creates what they call is a cash value scenario, right? Which is what you kind of talked about, is money we can pull from. But you have to understand, again, the terms of your contract and the company, that when you deal with whole life coverage, you have money that's going to the life insurance portion, and then you have money that's going to this cash value. But there are restrictions on cash value through the whole life policy. Whereas if you begin to pretty much siphon or withdraw the money out of the policy, it will negatively impact the coverage of the life insurance that you have. Because if you pull out too much and you never pay it back, then the life insurance premium that was supposed to be
That
going
was
to
supposed to be
assist in that
covering.
is going to begin to decrease your amount of coverage on the death benefit side, to where your death benefit will no longer exist. It'll lapse your policy. If you take out, say for instance, you have $10,000 sitting in that policy. Well, that's for you to borrow it. They're saying you
Wow.
can borrow the money. You can request a loan because that's in your contract. If you read the fine print, it is a loan. They expect you to pay that money back, because whole life is an either or product. It isn't when you pass away, the family is going to get the death benefit and they're going to get the money that was sitting in a cash value. That's not how that works. Remember, life insurance companies got to make money somehow. So on that whole life policy, what's going to happen is the person passes away and you got a $20,000 policy and you got 10,000 sitting in the in the cash value. What's gonna happen is you're gonna get what's the greater amount. So your family is gonna get that 20,000, but that 10,000 is going back to the life insurance company. So So that's why people don't need to have a whole life policy for a long period of time. Whole life policies, I'm looking at have it for a shorter amount of time because you have less likelihood to be giving away money
Mm.
to the life insurance company because you've had that whole life policy all
And
these
that
years.
10,000 was built up over time.
Yes, over time.
Because it's an
Yeah,
either or. If it's a shorter span time, there possibly won't be any in reserves, if you will,
correct.
if you've only had the policy 3-4 years
Correct.
on great grandmother
Yes.
who is at high
So
risk.
that part. Yes. So
Mhm.
those I recommend. So if you can't qualify for a policy where, you have to be a little bit more on the healthy side, then a whole life policy may be your only option. Then and only then do I say go ahead and go for a whole life policy. Or if you're over that 70, 75 age threshold, then that is probably the policy for you because your life expectancy, of course, we pray to God that you have another 20 years left, right? That you can live to 100 or live to 95, right? But your life expectancy realistically is shorter. So then you won't lose as much money. You won't be giving away money as much money because the growth now is a shorter period of time. So you might end up with $900 or something like that in that cash reserve. So your family is going to get that 10,000. And if I lose 900, oh well, not a big
That's
deal.
fine.
Not a big deal to
And
me.
so I'm
I didn't
glad you
even feel
touched
it.
on that because I know even when I was doing the research, it's
Hmm.
like everybody's whole life insurance back, whole life. It's like this big hoorah. It's like that's how you build the wealth. But if you don't understand the contractual terms of it, you
Yeah,
can end up getting it on someone that probably shouldn't have it, giving away more money than you're
exactly.
getting because
Absolutely.
social media is saying whole life,
Hmm.
permanent whole life. So glad you
Hmm.
touched on that.
Yeah, but the wealth building is through the index universal life policies. That's where they're talking about the whole be your own bank, and there's still misconceptions and misunderstandings behind that because the internet sensationalizes it and leaves a lot of information out, making people think that if I go get an index universal life policy and that index universal life policy is $1 million, I can touch $1 million and start a business.
Right.
No, ma'am. No, sir. You are not doing that because you
Ain't that
didn't
something?
put 1 million in, right?
Mm,
Index universal life policies are used normally, right, by the wealthy as tax deferments, kind of places where they can push money so that they can avoid taxes, right? Avoid
mhm.
tax because life insurance is, tax deferred, tax free, right? When you're dealing with life insurance, right? But what happens is people are thinking that they can pull off of money that
They
they
never
never even
even put it
built
in.
up. Yeah. So you're only paying $150 a month on $1 million policy. You're not going to extract 500,000 from
Right.
that policy because you
Mhm.
opened it up 6 months ago. Now you want to start a business and you think you're going to pull out 500,000. That's not going to happen.
Mm.
No way,
But
shape, or
see, they're
form.
able to do that. They're able to put 500 in a
Exactly. They
million
got the money.
and
They
say,
have liquid. So if the
yeah.
more liquid you have to play around with, then you can hide that money away and you can utilize it and you can build
Mm.
off of that and you can build the interest. And what I love to make sure people understand is if your money is participating in the market, then participating in the market says that you're going to be able to benefit on the highs of the market, the changes in the market, but you're not going to be penalized if the market were to crash or if, the market's not doing well because your money isn't in the stock market. It's only participating. When it participates in the market, you get to benefit off the increases, but you're not negatively impacted by the
By the decreases.
decreases in the market. So you're not going to lose money. You're not going to be sitting looking at, $100,000 and you go back, 2 months later
And
and
it's
it's 50,000 from 100,000 because the market did bad and it crashed. No, the money's going to sit. As the market then increases, you're going to be able to benefit from the highs of the market, right? But you're not going to be penalized when the market does poorly because you're not in the market. You're not playing around with the stocks. Your money is just participating in the market. So they
and
have to
it's
ask
deemed
those.
participating by doing what exactly?
It's operating on the benefits of the interest. So you're getting benefit of an interest rate
Mm.
as the interest rates go up, but you're not being negatively impacted
Right.
because you're not actually gambling
Right.
in the full
It's
on
not like you're in
stock
the stock
market.
market and you're putting it into Got you.
all these
Okay.
different funds and things like that. Like, no, we're
Right.
not playing around in the stock market with your money. That's not what's happening. But when you want to, and when you have, and we don't try to do index universal life policies for any less than 350 a month. If you don't have at least 350 to 500 a month to start an index universal life policy, it's really not beneficial for you to do it. It's going to take you forever and a
To
day
build
to
something
build up that
right.
money. Yeah.
Because the
You
more
got,
you
it
put
takes
in,
money
the
to
more
make
it's
money.
in.
Yeah,
But
people
if
got to
but
understand.
it wouldn't make sense to be paying $60 a month. It'll,
You
look,
can get
look,
a baby
you
one.
wish we would live
I
long enough to
know.
put it up
You
in.
can get a baby one, right? And then
Yeah.
you think you're doing something, but it's really, when you really look at the numbers, it's really
As
not
far as
much to be able
maximizing,
to
it wouldn't make sense unless it's probably three
know.
fifty that you're.
So yeah, so you have to be able, and it's really the mindset and being able to understand the questions to ask when you're
Mhm.
sitting down with a broker or a financial professional and things like that. Make sure that they're licensed. I hear so many people talking about, oh, my uncle is a financial planner, a financial
Mhm.
advisor, and your uncle may have been the only person in the family who knew how to save money, but he don't
Right.
have license in nothing the first, so he never took a class. He just know how to save a little bit of money. That's not the person you go to. Go to the person who understands the laws, understands the structure, understands a contract, has access to various companies to where they can actually take a look at the various options that you have and can pull illustrations for you and actually go over the illustrations with you so you understand exactly how your money is going to grow over time depending on
Mhm.
whatever your financial goals are.
Hmm. So index, is there any other types of policies besides the
I don't deal whole
no?
life, index universal life, term policies. Those are pretty much your
Pretty much
core
it.
because those paid up policies and things like that, those old school things are not anything that you really want to deal with. And then when you get into other types of investments, you look at annuities. You know, when you get to be 45, 47 years old, you want to look at getting into an annuity because look at what the culture we're in right now, where Social Security is impacted. You got people's retirements now that are threatened and things like that because we're now in a culture we never thought that we'd be in.
Hmm.
Well,
Hmm.
people really should, at your 45, 47, 50, you should be thinking about an annuity because if you have retirement money sitting out there, you want to protect your retirement money, and annuities are kind of like life insurance for your retirement. It's going to help protect
Uh-huh.
your retirement, right? From any downfall to make sure that you have a guaranteed amount of money coming in at the
Regardless
time that you are
of what
ready to
happens
regardless of
economically.
what happens, you're paying for that benefit to protect their nest egg, right? So you want to make sure that that's something that you look into because a lot of life insurance companies do also offer annuities as
And
well.
so without an annuity and you have this whatever, what, 401k, whatever you kind of been, something happens economically, it could be
Think about what
impacted and
happened
you
in
end up with
2000, what was that,
nothing. Right.
2008, when like market
Right.
crash and people lost all their money and stuff like that. People didn't have protection through annuities. And that's kind of,
Hmm.
where they were kind of left butt naked and people lost a lot of their money
Everything.
in
A lot
that
of people
period of
lost
time.
everything. Yeah.
Yep, houses, the housing market crash and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, they have to be very cognizant of that kind of stuff. So they want to make sure that everything that encompasses your financial house, you want to make sure that you're taking in account to all that. You want to make sure that life insurance is up to date. You want to make sure that you're modifying your will and changing your will every time you turn around, every time you get something, you get a new property or whatever, update your will. Make sure that you have trust available for your younger children. If your children are under 18, you have all of these things. You have to begin to plan. Like this is no joke out here. Too many
Hmm.
things are happening. People are ill prepared because we're ill informed. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. We're so ill informed, and we just need to make sure that we're doing, the best that we can do to make sure that we're passing on the information and sharing the information and giving like I'm about to start doing like free informational sessions just to give
Yes.
people
Thank
the
you.
information.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's something that's so well, it's just needed. It's
I
just
mean,
needed. We're just
even with what you shared just recently, and me being very much aware and involved and invested, I'm still like, oh wow, I didn't think about that. Oh, I didn't know
Mhm.
about that. So I can only imagine what other viewers are probably just as now more informed just based on listening to you lately. So I have two questions that I've just
Mhm.
been waiting for you to ask.
Yes.
So, well, I have a scenario, and I think I have a question.
Okay.
can you have too many policies on someone?
I always tell, so this is the thing. I always tell people, get enough insurance in one policy so that you don't need 4 or 5 and 6 policies. Because I know people think they doing it up by, oh, I got 7
You really
policies, I
do
got
think,
6
yeah.
policies, but think about this. You're paying 60 to $150 for each one of those policies, right? With every life insurance policy, there's what's called a policy fee or an administrative fee
Mm-hmm.
with those policies. Every single policy has some type of administrative fee because back office got to get paid somehow,
Mm-hmm.
right? Administration, printing paper, sending emails, and all that. So there's an administrative cost. It might be $50 per policy. It might be $70 per policy. It depends on the company. People
Mm-hmm.
aren't taking into effect that on top of your
What
monthly
you're paying.
payment, you have this expense of this policy fee. Sometimes it's annual, sometimes, depending on the company, it just depends. But why pay that extra administrative fee
For all the
across
different
7
policies.
policies
Mm-hmm.
when if you can get a $2 million policy out of one company, then do that. Now, if there's a point where this company will only cover you for 150,000 and this one will cover you for 250 because you have a house that's 600,000 and you want to make sure that you have enough, then yeah. But I never, I err on the side of don't do those 5, 6, and 7 policies, because at the end of the day, life insurance companies are not going to bang down the door of your family trying to give away
Right.
money.
At all.
Your family
Mm-hmm.
needs to know who you had life insurance with, what companies they are, who the agents are, because when they pass away, we don't know. We don't have a database of people that
Right.
passed away, and we're going to call people that say, hey, you're the beneficiary on this policy. Can you come pick up your money? That's how
Right.
life insurance companies make out because of us not sharing the information, and people don't know that somebody had a life insurance policy. So the money goes unclaimed
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because nobody knew. I tell my clients all the time, if you want to know if somebody has a life insurance policy, get access to the bank account, check all the drawers, of course, but check the bank account. When was the last withdrawal? Are there any life insurance companies listed in the statement? That's the company that you go to, because that's probably where that active policy is sitting.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever has access to the bank accounts, it's good. Probably they're probably listed as one of the beneficiaries,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, won't go too much into it, but I kind of discovered, made some discoveries that I was grateful for,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just a blessing that I was already POA, so I kind of didn't have to,
Right.
do too much to be able to, but because there was a concern, like, okay, hold on, life has changed, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, cool, perfect. So I was able to
Mm-hmm.
kind of, just as you just described, easily located,
Right.
contact, and because I was already POA, I was able to say, here, like,
Mm-hmm.
now talk to me,
Right.
like, what's going on,
Exactly.
and then
Exactly.
realizing that I wasn't on all of them. Others were,
Right.
and
Right.
then had to make some hard
Right.
decisions
Right.
of a transition because, you know, the
That's what
person's
happened.
not really
The
in a
onion get peeled
situation
back.
where they'll be able to even do what they was expecting them to do at some
Right.
point, if you follow me. So
Yeah.
that was it was I was nervous,
Mm-hmm.
but it was so easy to kind of maneuver through just based on already having proper paperwork.
Right.
And so I'm bringing that up because that kind of goes back to wills,
Mm-hmm.
power of attorneys. Like, this stuff is important,
Right.
on top of life insurance, because if you do happen to be the person that now is responsible, you don't want that to be too difficult for them
Mm-hmm.
because there's
Yeah. That
there's been
part.
no paperwork on you. Just because you're saying I'm the daughter, I'm the son, these people don't care about none of that. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, however, that's the client, not you. And
Exactly.
so it's almost like we got to kind of get some paperwork together with
Mm-hmm.
the elders in our family, to say, not to say too much, so that if
Mm-hmm.
something was to come down the pipeline, and not just death, I'm not even talking about just death,
Right.
right? This had nothing to do with that. This is, thank God someone survived, but the
Mm-hmm.
situation has changed for them. And so
Absolutely.
we want to be able, our parents and grandparents want to be able to allow someone to easily just slide in
Mm-hmm.
and take care of what needs to be taken care of. But that comes with paperwork now,
Mm-hmm.
because they're probably not going to be in the right mindset to do paperwork later, right?
Exactly.
And so
Yep. And me being
that's why it kind of leads me
52.
to another question. Like, I know what, and I'll just be free with this. I know it's
Mm-hmm.
been difficult with my brother because he is not in a position where he can make a decision
Mm-hmm.
for me, and there was no paperwork prior.
Right.
So, I had to become the, look for trying to get guardianship and just like really
Yes.
like
That
trying to figure
unexpected.
something out
Yeah, those
because,
unexpected situations. It's
yeah,
like, yeah. It's like, what do I do first? What paperwork? How do I get
exactly.
access?
What
And
do
how
you
do
do
I,
first, and what I'm allowed to do first? Number
yeah.
one.
What paperwork will allow them to talk to me?
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's super important. Um, so let me ask you this. I had a situation, I mean, it's ages ago,
Mm-hmm.
but this is something I've always personally been bothered by with
Mm-hmm.
life insurance. And so a relative dies. They were covered for years even prior.
Mm-hmm.
They were young, like super healthy,
Mm-hmm.
but it was because of how they died. It
Mm-hmm.
was an issue for them paying out.
Yep. I got
And
two
so I want you to
examples.
cover that
Mm-hmm.
without me giving too much, because we
Right.
had to come out of pocket. And it's like, you got a policy. Why we got
Yep.
to pay out of pocket? It
So,
was because of how he
yep.
died.
I'll give you two examples of when I experienced that, or two examples of when people usually experience that. Suicide is one of the major situations where you have to really, again, understand the parameters of a contract, because there are some companies, some term companies, that will cover suicide, but the policy has to have been in effect for at least 2 years. As long as it's in
Mm-hmm.
effect for 2 years, if that person commits suicide 2 years and 3 days after the policy had reached its 2 year point,
Mm-hmm.
they will cover. Some insurance companies will not cover suicide at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one of their pain points. They will not cover, no matter how long you had the policy, they will not cover in the event of suicide. So that's why you need to understand the parameters of the contract, whatever the restrictions are on passing and things like that,
So
is where
that's a
that
question
comes
that we should be
into.
asking.
Mhm.
Not that we're expecting anyone to, but that's probably something you want to
It
know.
happens,
God forbid.
sometimes, we look at, the way kids built today, they ain't as tough, they ain't built as strong. And we have a lot of emotional situations now that people are dealing with nowadays, where that is now a factor, where people's emotions are now overtaking them, and these things happen, more than they did, back when we was coming up. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Another situation that I've seen is where people will have policies with their job,
Mm-hmm.
and their children, they believe their children are covered through the policies with their job, right? But when you look at the employer's main focus is the employee.
Mm-hmm.
So now the employer has all these restrictions and stipulations on how they're going to pay out. So for the employee, when you have work related insurance, that's why I tell people, always get private insurance. You never want to be solely dependent on your work insurance, because the way the work insurance works is that if you're not working, I think within like a 24-hour period or something like that of your pay cycle or something like that, and you pass away,
Mm-hmm.
that's where a company can say, well, you weren't
You
technically
weren't.
working, so
Mm,
we don't need to,
wow.
we're not going to pay. We're not going to pay for the coverage. Or say, for instance, a few years back, there was a guy, this was when I worked at DHS, there was a guy that worked for like one of the government agencies, and he went on this killing rampage
Mm,
or whatever, right? Well, he had life insurance through the government and all of that, right? He went on this killing spree. Well, because he killed a whole bunch of people, the life insurance company did not pay his
mm.
family the death benefit, because he had work insurance. He operated outside of the parameters
Oh,
of the work expectation,
coverage or what? Mm-hmm.
the work
Mm-hmm.
expectations. So whether he stole, whether he committed murder, whether he whatever, those things were against the guidelines of the company. So he failed to um stay in alignment with whatever the company policies and procedures were by committing that crime, so they didn't pay, right? I also have a situation where someone's child wasn't covered because of the way that they passed away. I think it might have been a car accident and their blood alcohol level was a certain, so there was a drunk driving type accident where they passed away and the job didn't cover that child's passing because there were alcohol or something like that in the system, which went against the company guidelines. So they
So you got company guidelines and then the policy guidelines, which is why you say go private, because it can get pretty hairy with that situation.
yeah,
Because they
you
don't
have
really want
more
to pay out for
control.
real unless
Yeah,
it's the employee,
that
like you're
part.
saying.
Yeah. So you have to understand when you get a job policy, they're not giving you a copy of the contract. You probably sign this paper saying, I want life insurance, take 1 times my income, right? You're going to check the
Right.
box, you're going to sign it, you're going to give it to the HR person, and that's the last time you're
And
going to
that's
see that
it.
information.
Ain't that's
They didn't
so
give you no
true?
policy.
No
That's why I'll be like,
copy,
so,
ain't
oh,
no fine print you can go back and revisit.
nope. You can probably go like for the government, they have, your government manual that has all of your
I
benefits
mean, you probably
information
can
and stuff like
request it
that.
if you will, but I'm sure they'll take you through the ringer. But your point,
Yeah, they
you
don't.
signing something without no copy.
Mm-mm. Yep. And then you asking an HR person who ain't got no license in life insurance the first life insurance questions
She just
where they're
pushing paper. He or
limited.
she just pushing paper.
Exactly. She working a job just like you clocked in and worked your job. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So it's like always have a private policy outside of the job because it's something that you have more control over. The job is in control. The job is the client. You're not the client. The
Right. The
employer
job
is the
is
client and they're covering a bunch of people, right? And then people say, oh, well, when I leave the job, so I ask people all the time, so you plan on dying in that chair? You don't want private insurance, so you tell me you plan on dying in that chair. No, you're not going to die in that chair. Your plan is to retire, right? So you want to make sure that you have everything taken care of for your family. Because remember, you only getting the free part is your income, and then you pay extra for that 1.5 times and all this other kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Times your income. That's still not enough because I don't see too many people with a $500,000 policy
right.
on the job.
To the
There
job.
aren't too many. And if you are, then that's a sad mistake because you're not going to walk away with that. Because even I used to work for the government. When you leave the government, a lot of times your policy will decrease at, I think it's like 2%. 2% per month or something like that once you retire, depending on the type of retirement plan that you had. But I've experienced a lot of clients who had a $400,000 policy when they were with the job, then they retired, and then over time it dwindled down to 25,000. And you paying all that money because now you're paying more money than they were taking out of your check. But now they're decreasing your life insurance. Well, how is the mathing on that one?
Right. That don't even make sense.
But it's only because we're not going to the seminars, we're not understanding what the life insurance parameters are, we're not understanding what the requirements are because we just sometimes don't know the right questions to ask.
You said something about if you're not working, uh, 20. So is that could that like ideally be if you're on vacation or if you're out
So
sick?
vacation, you're usually getting vacation pay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if you're on a
If
non-paid
you're on
day,
a
right? So forever. So
non-paid,
say for instance, you go on a cruise, right? And they say you got 7 days of vacation. If you take 10 days, then those last 10 days are going to be non-paid. Well, on those non-paid days, if you pass away, they don't got to cover you because your
wow.
vacation days were for those 7. You
And you
decided to take
recover for
3
that
extra
because you were
9.
paid.
Exactly. Non-paid
Wow.
days. I got somebody that I know that experienced that with a loved one, and they were like supposed to start working or something like that. Had signed the paperwork and everything. They were supposed to start working like that next day or whatever or something, and they passed away. Well, the insurance ain't covered because you didn't
Right. You
start your
didn't work.
first work day.
Wow. So I think I have one more
Hmm.
question. So you mentioned suicide and you mentioned what was that one you mentioned? As far as like when they don't want to pay.
Suicide.
I
um
think you were talking about
Something in their system if they
right,
pass away and they had
right. Like if it
something
was like some
negative or
alcohol
alcohol or
levels or
drug
something might be
related
too
or
high or
things like
something.
that, and if they operated illegally outside of the parameters of what the job, you know what I'm saying, because
Mm-hmm.
for like government you can't break the law, there are certain
Right,
things that you can't do. So if you're out here robbing and killing and murdering people and you happen to pass away in the process, the job is
They
not
don't have to
obligated
honor
to
that.
pay. Yeah, they don't have to honor that
But what
contract.
about if someone's murdered? Isn't it some parameters around something? Because
So,
that was the experience we had. It was because he was murdered that they wouldn't. It wasn't that they were refusing to pay out completely.
uh-huh.
They just had to do their own investigation.
Yep. So I experienced that too, with a client. So what happens in the case of, in this particular situation, the individual was murdered. They just didn't pay out quickly because of the investigation. So through the investigation, they had to make sure that no one that was listed as a beneficiary had anything to do with the death of the insured,
Mm,
right? So they have to go through this investigation. They have to make sure that the mama, the grandmother, whoever didn't put a hit out on the uncle, the father, whoever,
mm,
to make sure that all these things are done. And luckily, in this case, they actually caught the person who actually committed the crime or whatever. But they still, and the insurance company, the adjusters, and all that, they have to talk to the investigators. Right. So
right.
they're in communication with the police department regarding the case because it is an open investigation
Hmm.
and they have to make sure that no one involved had anything to do. I'll do you one better. There was a time where this one company would add the spouses or baby mother, baby father on a policy together, right?
Hmm.
So they'd have one policy. There was, say, for instance, a husband and a wife, or a baby mother and baby father on one policy together.
Hmm.
One person happened to be the owner, and the
Hmm.
other one is like the spouse, considered the spouse on the policy, but you have the
Okay.
owner. The owner usually has control of the policy, right?
Hmm.
So what occurred was the owner put a hit out on the other parent, the spouse
Hmm.
or whatever, right? Had somebody go to try to murder her or whatever. It botched up. They shot her. Luckily, she didn't die, right? Well, now there's an open investigation because now this person is trying to come off of this policy because this guy just tried to have me
Right.
killed for the life
Mm.
insurance money,
Mm.
right? But technically, they couldn't remove her because the owner
What's the
had
owner
to
with
release
control?
her and had control over the policy.
Oh
That
my God.
was a whole
But
legal
you would think that
situation.
that investigation would have benefited her.
But it would have been cut and dry, right? That they would have, but because of the paperwork, because it was legally binding, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they had, it was a whole situation. Like it took a while for them to be
Mm.
able to, because they had to prove that this happened. They had to prove that this person had another relative go and try to take this person out.
Wow.
That person, they couldn't contact the guy because now he on a run. You know what I'm saying? So they can't contact the owner of it because they're on the run. So she had to get lawyers involved and all this other kind of stuff. Eventually, right? They were able to do that, but then the company changed its practice where now they don't put people on the same policy in them anymore on that
Um,
fashion because of that situation.
mm.
Now the policies are always going to be separate. The husband's policy is that, the wife's policy is that. They don't have them joining because a situation like that can occur. Now legally you're trying to disconnect the
But you don't have the authority to
relationship.
do it. And then when it
Yep,
does, the
because it was a
owner don't want
contract.
to let you go because they might want to try that again.
Exactly,
Wow.
that
I'm
part.
not being insensitive. I'm
No,
sorry.
yeah. But
Um,
stuff like that, we just don't understand the real things out here that are happening. But like people, spousal abuse and things like that, we got to take all these things into consideration on why someone may want to do you harm and making sure. And that's why sometimes I talk to people who are single. I'm like, yeah, I know you love that guy. Yeah, right now you love him today, but I mean, y'all not married right now. So
mhm.
I say have your auntie, your mother, or whoever also as a secondary beneficiary because money changes people.
Oh yeah.
Money changes people. And
Overnight.
although you
Hmm.
think your good girlfriend gonna make sure all this stuff is done, when we cut the check for life insurance, we're not monitoring how that
Right. That don't
person
got nothing
takes
to do
care of
whether
your
y'all still on
children.
good terms.
Yeah. It's like there might not be any money going to your kids. They may spend and that's why I tell people all the time, have a percentage also set aside for your children as well as a person who's going to take care of them, because you want to make sure that their money is protected. So when your child turns 18, we're able to cut that check to that child. Whoever was raising them during that time, whatever money they had, they use that money for those purposes, and your child now has access to money that you wanted to leave to them, and that good girlfriend or that baby father or whoever didn't have 100%
Right.
access to all the money. And then when your child gets older, they left with nothing because they say,
Right.
oh, I had to raise you, I had to whatever, I use the money for this, I use the money for that. Like, no.
And that was there's a question in the comments, but I was also wanting to know, is there, and then we're gonna end. This has been so informative. You have no idea. And so, there's no way of holding people accountable when they have policies on loved ones that transition, refuse to use it.
They refuse, oh, to use it on the burial and stuff
On
like
the,
that. No,
mm, mm,
no. That's why I tell people, be who do you know that you know without a shadow of a doubt is going to make sure that you're laid to rest, at minimum, laid to rest the way that you want it done, right? Or make sure that you go and pre-plan all your stuff. Give the funeral home and all those people your policy numbers and things like that. Go and do, like, I don't know all the details of how, because I don't work for a funeral home, but go check on that funeral home, right? Make sure that all the things that you can put in place are put in place. So
mm,
that's little to nothing that other people have to worry about. But no, we don't put parameter. We're not responsible for
right.
how the people spend the money. And that's a lot of times where things go wrong in families,
Mm-hmm.
right? Something's gonna happen. My brother got a policy on my mother. I got a policy on my mother. We thinking we gonna go half on some stuff or whatever. And they go and they take their money and they go do whatever they want. And they be like, what? Because first of all, you probably won't know that they have
Right.
the money because no one's discussing the fact that
Mm-hmm.
you're a beneficiary or they're a beneficiary. If you're not, they're not telling you who the beneficiaries are.
Mm-hmm.
So Ray Ray could have got his check and he smooth got a new car. You trying to figure out how Ray Ray got a new car with no job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ray Ray had a life insurance policy too, and he didn't tell you about, and he used his money for other things.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't ever, you never know. That's why I tell people all the time, if you a sibling, you the responsible sibling, just make sure you have a little something on your parent, even if it's something like $20,000 or whatever, because you never want to be solely dependent on somebody else who you think is going to do the right
Right.
thing, and they
Exactly.
disappoint you in
And
the end, and
you
you're
come
left
out of pocket.
and you're
Been
left
there,
holding
done
the bag.
that.
Like, nobody wants to, because you're dealing with the death. Now you're dealing with death stress on that level. Now you're
And
dealing
there's
with
no room
financial
to grieve.
stress.
There's no
You
room to grieve.
can't, because you're
So
dealing
can you
with
see the
the money.
comments? Let me see
Mm-mm,
here.
I can't see any of the
Okay.
comments.
If a person is 59 and paying like 200 a month with a term policy, do you
200,
recommend a person
200.
200
Please tell
a
me you
month
got
with
a
a
million
term
dollar.
policy? Do you recommend a person switch to another insurance like whole life? All that money that you invested in the term insurance can it be transferred over to a new policy? So she's adding, do you recommend her changing it over,
So I
or will the money be
recommend
transferred?
I recommend you sitting down with an agent, take a look at what's being covered, how much, because I can't necessarily speak to your specific situation because I don't know how much coverage you have for what you're paying. So we have to kind of take a look at that. I'm never going to recommend whole life off of the break because we need to talk about what your financial goals are. So we want to make sure that we're able to recommend a product that fits whatever your financial goals are. And think about this. People always say, I put all this money into this term policy. I ain't getting nothing in return. Well, think about life insurance like this. Term is like renting an apartment. You only getting what you putting in, and that's all you getting the coverage for. So you're just renting space, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like your car insurance. When you want to switch car insurance companies, you're not transferring all the money that you put into
Right.
that car insurance, right? You're not, you just paid for the coverage because when I leave the house, the life insurance is doing what it's supposed to do. I made it back in the house. I didn't die. So the life insurance is still
It's
doing what
still
it's
in
supposed
place
to
doing
do,
what it's supposed to do.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The term, because you're paying a lower amount, that's why term policies are what they are, because the lower the coverage amount, you're just paying for life insurance. When you move over into the index universal life, your whole life policies, now you're looking to build cash for various purposes. Now you're paying a little bit more because you're paying a little bit for your life insurance and you're paying a little bit towards the savings that you're putting in, right?
Well, maybe
So,
that's why she's asking. Maybe she's asking based on what you mentioned earlier
mhm.
and the fact that she's paying $200. She's probably figuring like, shoot, should I
Yeah,
just
we need to
go?
have a conversation. You need
Mhm.
to inbox me. We need to take
Yeah,
a look
yeah.
at, because
Please inbox, please, please,
somebody
please.
paying $200 for a term policy. You and health conditions. We have to take into account what health conditions this particular individual may have gotten, because they may have been rated by the term company. Because some term companies will take people that are diabetic. They might not take you on insulin. But if you have limited health conditions, right, they may give you a higher amount because you still are a risk. So they're going to give you a little bit of term, right? But they're going to charge you more because your health conditions put you in a different risk class. So maybe it is beneficial for us to move you over into another policy that's more lenient to whatever your health conditions are, so that you're not paying that amount. That makes me
Right.
cringe, $200. Unless you're paying for a whole family. I think I'm paying for a whole family at $200 if in a term
Yeah.
policy, not for
Yeah.
just one person.
Let me make sure. I'll make sure that you get her information. I did reply her a DM. So another question was when you're trying to put maybe your child's father or boyfriend or something like that on it, do you need like their social security? Like what information will be required
Girl,
for you to
yeah, you should
provide?
already know.
Look,
You better have that boy
listen,
social security number. You better have his driver copy of his driver's license. You gonna lay down with that? You gonna lay down with him? I need your social. I need a copy of your driver's license. All
right.
that stuff your mama told you. You better make sure you have in that drawer that don't nobody know about. You better make sure you have all that information. Trust and believe, because those are just pieces of information that are going to be required when you think about getting life insurance on someone. That's just pertinent information, because we are doing background checks. We are taking a look at their medical history, their medical background, and things like that. So there are certain things that you want to make sure you have, and you want to make sure that you have a pretty decent relationship with that person, because you never want to be sneaky.
Right.
I tell you, don't want to operate off lies,
Right.
right? You don't want to try and sneak around and get life insurance on somebody and they don't know it. At the end of the day, it's for the benefit of the child. At the end of the day, you ain't trying to go get BBLs and all this other kind of stuff on
Right.
nobody money, right? You want to make sure that you do the responsible thing for your children or your child.
Right. So she replies she'll reach out. She says she's had the policy since she was 30 and it keeps going up. That's why it's so
It's
expensive.
probably an annual renewable term. So if it's an annual
Oh,
renewable term, you definitely want to make sure that we move you off of something that's going to keep the same rate over a period of time, over, the length of time that we have left on this earth. So we definitely want to have a conversation to get you, because a lot of car insurance companies do annual renewable term because they're bundling your product with your car insurance and things like that. But people don't realize that, because they think they're getting this whole discount package rate, they're not noticing that their life insurance is going up every single year or every 5 years. Again, that means no matter where your insurance is, always take a look at the contract.
okay. Well, that was awesome. That
I was
was, man, I'm full
excited.
of that information. That was some good stuff right there. That was. So is there anything? So you said you're gonna start these workshops. When can we expect them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, probably within the next maybe 30 to 60 days, I'm working with another organization, a women's organization, that has some space, and they offer for us to be able to utilize the space to do workshops and trainings and things like that. In the Iverson Mall space or whatever. So we're going to be kind of partnering with them to kind of do some things that are going to be free to a lot of women in our community and things like that, because we always want to make sure that as much as we can, we offer free services. I of course get paid as an agent when I do a policy, so I don't have a problem kind of giving back to the community and offering the free service as far as the information, so that we give them the opportunity to make the best decisions that are
Right.
appropriate for their family, and we can help them in all various areas. We got a lot of people that
They're asking for your information. Put your information in the chat. Your contact information.
oh, hold on.
So what
That
was the
yeah.
other question? Before we go,
So,
are you so you're open to contacting people on others' behalf?
mhm. 6790.
are you open to contacting people on someone else's
I
behalf? I know you mentioned
do
about
it all the
calling.
time. Yeah,
Okay.
somebody be like, "Oh, come on, aunt. I've been trying to
Okay.
get her to do X, Y, and Z. Maybe if she talked to
Yeah,
you,
because
maybe you can give her
sometimes
another
hearing it from the
perspective."
expert, it makes more
Mm-hmm.
sense versus us just saying, "Oh, get it, you need it."
Yeah.
You can probably put it in better
And
terms. Okay.
all my
Okay.
client like my clients, from going from one company to another, they all wanted to follow me because at the end of the day, my clients can reach me on the weekends. My clients text me in the middle of the night. They call me on a holiday. It ain't like State Farm where I'm closed at 5:30 and you can't reach me,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, when they suffer a loss, I want to make sure that I'm available to them whenever they need me to be available, right? So my clients have turned into my good girlfriends or friends and family. And what happens is they refer me to a lot of people because I've helped people in other states where I'm not even licensed, where they had issues with a company, and I was able to help them maneuver around, what the company was trying to do and get the policy to lapse. And I told them, when to pull the money out, what questions to ask. I didn't make a dime off of that family, but when all was said and done, they sent me a check for $100, just
Wow.
thanking me for helping them with their elderly mother's policy, because they would have lost everything if
Mm.
they hadn't gotten the information that I was able to provide them with. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just here to help people in any way that I can, even if it's not a company that I'm affiliated with. I'll answer, whatever questions you have, because I want you to make sure that you have what you were sold
Right.
at the end of the day, because
Right.
sometimes we have to have that buyer's remorse. We signed a contract, we signed up for something, and we have no clue what that
What we're
person
saying.
sold us. Yeah,
Hmm.
so let's just sit down and break those things down so we really understand exactly what we have. And I tell people all the time, if you have what's appropriate, I never recommend anyone changing or switching. Let's take a look at what you have. Let's ask the appropriate questions. And I tell people all the time, when you want to find out information about your life insurance policy, never go back to your agent. Always go to the customer service department and
Uh-huh.
ask the questions that you need to ask, because those calls are recorded. Your agent is going to tell you, sometimes, most times, your agent is going to tell you things that is going to keep you locked into their product, because they have this idea that their product may be the only product that you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you need the truth. The customer service department on a recorded line has to tell you if you're going to lose money in the policy, if you're able to withdraw, because at the end of the day, you can go back, and if they gave you any erroneous information, you can sue them because the call
Wow.
was reported.
It's
The
recorded, right?
agent,
Mm-hmm.
you talking to the agent, they telling you whatever they want to tell you. They walk away, they quit the company, there's no recourse. So always make sure that you deal with once your policy is active, do what you can to deal as much with the customer service portion of the company, because those calls are recorded. You can always go back and double back, and you can hold someone accountable for the information that they told you.
Okay. I'm trying to tag her. Um, awesome, awesome, awesome.
I'm
Man, that was.
excited. I
Thank
like
you, thank
helping
you,
the community.
thank you
I
so
like
much. Please
helping.
keep me updated on your informational sessions. I definitely will promote that for you for sure.
Thank you.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
I just kind of get this. I get this feeling where it's like, yeah, yeah, so we gotta start inviting you to the family reunions or something like that. Bring you to tell you stop by the baby showers or something. It's a
Exactly. That's
holiday,
when
you
it
know.
starts. At the baby shower, that's when it starts. The baby showers, the weddings, and things like
Yeah,
that.
seriously.
People gotta know. I tell people all the time. I got life insurance on my ex-husband. Yes, I have a baby father too. I got life insurance there, because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that worst come to worst, my children are taken care of. And honestly, and these are real conversations.
Hmm.
I don't want any other woman to have control over what my children are entitled
Say
to.
that part again. Hmm.
That just is bonus family, all that, love them to death, whatever the case is. But I will never allow a dollar to come between what my children are supposed to have and somebody's emotions, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
responsible enough to make sure that things are in place. He and I had a conversation. It's like, you got one on me, I got one on you. So whoever got a relationship after, whoever getting married after, or whatever, nothing is going to disrupt any
Right,
money that we have set aside for our children. And
right.
that's just it, because we're in an age where, you know, everybody's not staying married as long as you and your husband. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
Everybody ain't together lifelong love. You know
Right,
what I'm
right, right,
saying?
right.
Some people, it just happens like that, you know, and you have to have those real conversations, and people have to understand what they're allowed to do and how they can properly prepare for, you know, their children's future. You know, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, we're all, you know, our kids got. So, and we're the ones that should be helping them become financially, fiscally responsible.
Mm-hmm. 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 All right, man. This is some good stuff. If you missed it, rewind. We're gonna chop this up and we're gonna reshare this because this was very informative. Look, she said, get that insurance on them ex-husbands, baby daddies,
All
baby mothers.
of them, they in
Listen,
the
get it
streets.
on the
Make
parents,
sure.
the grandparents. You know, she's saying that, you know, don't allow anybody to come in between what's gonna happen afterwards in
Right.
terms of how somebody's gonna financially be protected and, you know, and cared for and things of that nature. She just loved it. It's much needed for our community. Thank you for having such a great heart and helping others with insurance.
Oh,
Yes,
thank
thank you. Thanks.
you.
Share, like,
Thank you.
share,
Thank you so
subscribe, like, share,
much.
subscribe. You're gonna hear more of her. I'm gonna make sure of that. Yes, so thank you so much. But I know we
Thank
went over,
you.
but this I couldn't end. It was just like this has covered everything.
Look,
I
whatever questions
appreciate you.
people
Thank you so
have,
much.
yeah, whatever questions people have, just reach out. I'll, you know, do one-on-ones. I'll message you in the inbox, whatever it is. We can have a conversation. I have other experts, you know, that work alongside of me that, you know, have deeper understanding and information on the annuity side and deeper on the IUL side and stuff like that. So we definitely can get you connected. If I don't know the answer, I'm connected with a lot of people and a lot of women that look like us that are
Mhm.
here and ready to help the community, you know, be in a better position financially.
That's what's up. Bless you, bless you, bless you.
Thank
Good night. I appreciate
you.
y'all patience. Thanks for joining us. How many plugs? What else you guys going on? Anything coming up? Anything coming up? Anything coming up besides the
No, you know
workshops?
what? Nope. I think, you know, right
No.
now, that's it. We just trying to get the word out to the people and make sure people are because, you know, at the end of the day, you're like, it's weather about to get crazy out here. It's about
Yeah.
to get warm out here. Crazy stuff about to start happening. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure that people plan for the unexpected. You know, of course, we
Yeah.
want to make sure that all our relatives are safe and sound. The kids are inside, but school's about to let out, and things get crazy at that time. Don't think of it as you're trying to plan for someone's demise. Think
Right.
that you're properly planning just in case something happens, because you don't want to be left not being able to do what you would love to do for your family in the event of an untimely passing. And we're not in control of that. God is in
Right
control of
at
that.
all.
So at the end of the
Yeah.
day, we
No
got to
matter
make sure that
younger,
we're
old,
good.
ill, or healthy, it can happen.
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
plug. Need some investment properties. DC, Maryland, Virginia, Florida, Georgia. DM me. Electrical service. DM me. Clothing. DM me. Athletic apparel. DM me. We appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much.
Thank
Peace.
you.
Peace. All right, peace.